Hey. What's going on, man?
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. Welcome to the What is Humans podcast. If you're new to the show, this podcast is conversations and personal development where myself, Shane, my partner, Dennis, discuss conversation about everyday life. And by having these conversations, we hope you can find some value in them too.
Yeah.
And sure. Most importantly, we are experts in
almost nothing.
What's up, dude?
Hey, nothing much, man. Just like I said, another week here in Los Angeles. I just got back from visiting my family, and my little brother goes back to school, sophomore in college this Friday. So
that's right, man.
Yeah,
it's good to see family for sure.
Yeah.
What are we talking about today?
We're talking about necessity of mystery. And this idea, I don't know if we've really talked about it in depth before, but it really came from a clip that was from another podcast, which was Alex Hormozy talking to Chris, Will, X.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting, this idea of the importance of mystery.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about, finding certainty, like understanding like your direction in life, the importance of having like a clear plan. And this idea kind of flips some of the ideas we had on our head.
Yeah.
Of why it is so important to not know what you're doing, to not have a concrete plan, to not have the exact roadmap built out, which I thought was different.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we've talked in past a lot about routine and how important it is to have those set up and in place, those systems, routines, in order to be successful. And a lot of what they talked about in this clip was this idea that every day, and therefore every week, month, year, we have the ability to go after something, and every day's new. And you can try something different. You never know what's going to happen. As opposed to choosing something that we have exact certainty on what the end result or outcome is going to be, is like completely against what we should be doing.
That's interesting. You said like should be doing. Yeah. It's like I wonder like if we'll end up talking about like growth and how chasing things or doing things that are certain.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if we're ever really growing doing those activities. And then on the opposite side of that, like doing things that are uncertain, I'm curious if that's like hobbies or activities that are pushing ourselves.
Yeah. I think something too that's really interesting was in that clip, they talk specifically about the excitement of mystery, the excitement of playing the game of life, right? And, you don't know what's going to happen today. But I would argue that for humanity and for majority of us, people might say they like excitement, but they don't, right? It's like most people want to go into the day knowing what their job looks like, do it to about the average. Maybe they're probably not going above and beyond every day. They're probably not doing less though either.
Sure.
And they want to go home. They want to have one of their same 5 meals that they probably have all year round.
Yeah.
And then hit the pillow.
Yeah.
And do it all again.
Yeah, we know we don't like change. At least, I know this for myself.
Yeah.
It's people hate surprises, things that having expectations on how things should go.
Yeah.
And of course, life, throws a wrench in any activity. Yeah. So it's like, I think it is a habit and a practice to get uncomfortable with that, which is what we've talked about a lot on this podcast. But where should we like highlight the importance where we can maybe begin to like understand why mystery and uncertainty is so important here?
Yeah, I think that, and this is kind of based off of a little bit of life experience, a little bit of what, I've seen either from books or documentaries, et cetera.
Sure.
But I think that excitement or changing your routine and maybe not knowing what the outcome's going to be is that, it allows us to be more alive and more present. For example, when we have like that yearly annual income that we know that we're going to get every year, there's not a lot of priority put on the day to day or even the week to week of, man, like what could happen today? You're probably like, hey, in 2 weeks, I'm going to get a paycheck. That'll be enough to pay my bills, my rent, my house payment.
Yeah.
We're going to be good. as opposed to the excitement where it's like, hey, if you're unsure of how you're going to pay the bills or, whatever, that's just an example. You are very present in the moment of, okay, everything matters. How I spend my time. Where am I going to get a job? Like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
And that's scarier. It's definitely, but it's also more exciting and more present.
Yeah. Scarier and exciting.
Yeah.
Same thing. But, I love that piece of like maybe how we are living in certain aspects, not our whole life, on autopilot where we're comfortably cruising.
Yeah.
We're, allowing things to be status quo, to be normal, to not push ourselves past what our limits are. And that's like the activities we're involved with, the conversations we have, we need to be finding ways to stretch ourselves to get comfortable with that uncertainty. That way we can push ourselves to grow instead of just kind of waiting on the sidelines and not doing anything to improve a situation.
Yeah. And we even talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if it was on the podcast or it was, just in person conversation between you and I, but it's so hard a lot of times to start these big endeavors or these changes when you have that backstop of, once again, using the example of like a job.
Yeah.
Or if you have the backstop of, a relationship that's like, hey, we do this every night. We watch Modern Family. We eat, ice cream, and then we go to bed. It's very hard when you have that backstop to be like, hey, we should try something. We should try dance class and just get out of our groove.
Yeah.
And that security of knowing the outcome of certainty takes away from, like we said, that mystery of, should we try something completely different?
Yeah. It also, from not having that novelty or having everything be, on autopilot, as I said earlier, it's almost harder to change because things are just okay. Things are average, things aren't going terribly, but things aren't super exciting.
Yeah.
So it's like when things are so normal, that's almost the worst place to be in because our backs aren't against the wall. We don't have challenge. We don't have a little bit of fear in our life to push ourselves to improve a situation. So it's almost like we need that fear in our life. We need that uncertainty because those things that we're arguing, that those mysteries, those huge leaps forward, that's where that comes from.
Yeah. And I think too, we're using the job or the relationship a lot in these examples, but it doesn't always have to be something that maybe your livelihood is attached to, right? It is those hobbies or passions that are just totally outside of your comfort zone. For example, it's like, if you want to go try and there's improv classes all the time.
Sure.
That is literally, you have to be in the present moment and you don't know what the partner across from you is going to say.
Sure.
So something like that for a lot of people, and myself still included, that is like a nerve-wracking moment where you do not know what's going to happen. So that's like small things that you can do where it's not like, hey, we're telling you to quit your job to add mystery into your life. It's more like, hey, do something that is just completely different for you to add some, like, I don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah. It's not necessarily the specific class, it could be, within your job or career, but it's, embark on learning something new. Do something to stretch yourself beyond your current limits instead of taking the safety route of doing exactly what you know.
Yeah.
Because then things will stay exactly the same then.
There's a couple things that I wanted to touch on and highlight too. That was like, first and foremost, we talked probably like a couple months ago about, and I think we might have, I don't know, a couple months ago is what I think, but it was about like the story of your life. And I've been thinking a lot about storytelling lately in the podcast and what I want to do, within business and just how much we consume every day. These are stories. And I think to myself in this topic a lot of, what are the stories that you want to have and you want to tell your children, your family, your friends about your life and these things that you've done? It's not that you have to do them for other people, but I do have an intrinsic thing of, I do understand, and I do want and understand my story to be this exciting life that has the drama and the twists and turns of, you didn't, because books aren't very good and movies aren't very good. When we start with a main character and we know exactly what's going to happen to them, we get to the end of the movie and it exactly happened. What happens is they fall, they fail. Yeah. They go out and they try something crazy. They fail again. But oh my gosh, like Rocky gets back up and then he ends up winning the fight and he's this legend in Philly, right?
Yep.
That's why we love that story.
Right.
And if we always do the certain outcome or the status quo action, that story is going to be very like, oh yeah, like, I did exactly what you thought I'd do.
Yeah. I love this question because I'm going to ask you a question on this of like thinking about our own stories, our own life. It's like, how do we see like painful moments, or it's like times of extreme challenge? We have this very narrow lens of how am I going to get through this?
Yeah.
How can I improve in this? Mm-hmm. But like when you take the year lens, looking back at that experience, or the 3-year lens, it's like, holy shit, I got through this. Like I actually grew a ton. Like how should we look at, challenging moments and times, with a different perspective?
I think, and this is something that I have a lot of experience in for myself, but I've gone through, we've talked about it before, crazy sales jobs that have been just like demoralizing, these crazy low moments that I've had. And then, you get let go from jobs and you're like, oh my gosh, like this, what is going on? And for me, doing exactly what you were talking about, that practice of looking at the story of your life, as opposed to just the chapter, the moment that seems like the world is crumbling down. And this is something that I've practiced, and it could be to do with confidence or cockiness that I've just developed over time. But think of it as, you are the star of your book. You are the main character. You're the star of the movie. So your life, every day that you have this, you have an opportunity, but you also have the circumstances that you're dealt as the star. Mm-hmm. It's like today, the star could rise up out of the ashes and start this business or follow their dreams.
Sure.
When something bad does happen to you, I think of it literally in terms of like the Huck Finn or the all these different stories in my head of, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this? This is a moment where the audience is like, there's no way they can come back from this. Mm-hmm. And so I really do relish in that fact that you are totally capable. Like, this is your story. It's not somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And you have the ability in this chapter to go through this crazy dip and then to come back next chapter and everyone around you to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got out of that. Like, how'd they do that?
Well, can't wait to read that book for sure. I think something a little more, I guess, specific would be like, how can we look at this as a larger time frame than the day, than the week, than the month?
Yeah. Just
because if we can look with a larger perspective of like, hey, the earth is still spinning.
Yeah.
It's, my life isn't over. This isn't the end of it. So we think things are so immediate, so finite.
Yeah.
So it's, I think, just remembering that, okay, this happened.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity. There's so much more to be had instead of seeing it as so immediate like we so often do.
Yeah, I'd also argue on that point of time and recognizing its value within the bigger picture is a lot of the life in your days, in your weeks, and your months, when you are choosing that uncertain path and it requires a lot of presence and being in the moment. It's like you do a ton, and when you do a ton every day,
sure,
or something that challenges you and you're very in the moment, it can seem like even after a month, you're like, oh my gosh, it feels like all that growth, it should be 6 months later.
Right.
When in reality, it was only a month of time.
Right.
Versus the opposite. If you do the same thing over and over again, what I generally feel happens is, wow, I did this from January to March. It's just going by day after day. And so it's almost like the more that I challenge that status quo of certainty, the more I can, recognize time as, wow, I did so many cool things.
You got a lot done.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. How can we think about, creating more necessity around mystery in our own lives, how can we maybe implement practices or habits to think about?
Yeah. I mean, I think that as like a first step, I think we always talk about, reflecting and looking at exactly where you are. Mm-hmm. I think that in our days, it's like we can recognize very quickly if we're adding mystery into it or if we're not.
I think a good starting point is just like look at areas that of your life that aren't good or bad. Yeah. And I think that having something be extremely average of this isn't ruining my life.
Yeah.
This isn't like super exciting to me.
Yeah.
I think those almost average things could be really cool identifiers to like, okay, why isn't this great?
Yeah.
Why isn't this shitty?
Yeah.
If it's so average, maybe I need to push myself. Mm-hmm. If it's so exciting, it's like, why is it so exciting? You probably have put a ton of work and have achieved a lot, here. Yeah. So I think look at the average things in your life as the first thing.
No, I completely agree. And I think that when you said too, like, is it ruining my life? I think if something's ruining your life, you're very aware. Like, yes. It's almost exciting in a sad or
look at the dull spaces.
Way.
Yeah.
It's like, if you look at, like you said, the average moments, that's something we tend to overlook as opposed to the things that are awesome.
Yeah. We only look at the extreme opposites.
Yeah, completely. And I think that after that, like once we can kind of identify what those average moments are in our life, maybe the next step is, okay, after you kind of like, why are they average? Or what are ways that I can add in mystery, excitement into those moments to make them not feel so mundane?
Yeah. And it's not necessarily, I don't know how we specifically add mystery. I think it's more of like, okay, what can I do to get out of my comfort zone here? Yeah. Where can I push myself, or where do I need to like say, hey, this isn't for me. Yeah. I need to remove this from my life because this isn't adding to my growth. Yeah. So I think taking the going all in this, or say like, hey, this isn't it, pulling in or going all in.
Yeah.
I think is the like two routes we need to look at for these average things.
Completely. I also think too that like we forget a lot of times as human beings, we're so malleable. Like, you will bounce back. Right. You're so strong. Like our ancestors have adapted over so many years through crazy conditions.
Yeah, I mean, just look at your own life experience of growing up, of how many times you've gotten knocked down. And trust me, everyone goes through shit. Yeah. So it's like, just look at your own personal experience. You've been through things that you can be proud of.
And so the idea, if you're intimidated by adding in something that's outside of your comfort zone or taking away something that's super comfortable, it's like, holy shit, that's pretty easy comparatively. Not easy, but you shouldn't be as scared as maybe you think that you should be. You are so capable and so able to like bounce back and like figure out ways that you shouldn't be worried about adding mystery in.
Yeah. I think a good third how could be around like perspective. Specifically, like I think we so often each day like focus on the problems of the day or the complaints of the day, or thinking in very short time blocks of what needs to be done or what's going on in your day. Yeah. We just need to have practice a little bit of a larger perspective of, hey, you can get through this. You will get through this, with time, with effort, an improvement. And this is a period or season of your life, instead of it being, this is the end of my story. This is the end of my book today.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's been so many different, and you, like you said, as human beings in your own personal experience, there do seem to be like these lengths of time that kind of bookend chapters or experiences. And the perspective of, if you are going through a tough time, which we've all been through, having identity crisis around changing roles, getting out of school, maybe not doing something that you necessarily love.
Yeah, death, loss.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's almost recognizing and having that perspective of like, that can be a difficult 3 months, 6 months.
Sure.
And just kind of being aware of, this too shall pass.
Right.
And there's going to be an equal and opposite return if we do the right things of 3 to 6 months of exponential growth.
Yeah.
And then it'll flip flop again. And then you're like, well, this reminds me a lot of the time that X happened. And we do that seesaw over and over again, you know?
Yep. It's a seesaw for sure.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about necessity of mystery?
Yeah. I think that clip and that topic really resonated for us and for me too, because we do talk so much about routine and certainty, but I do really believe in this idea that, you know, the story of your life should be an exciting one, that you as the main character choose the life that you want to have.
Yep.
And this necessity for mystery is like, hey, like when you're thinking about your book or your story or your movie, I would love for it to be interesting. And that doesn't have to be your job or anything like that, or something that, you know, you're like, I need this to live. It's like, okay, but it should be this super fun thing of like, oh, I decided one day to do dancing and I love dancing. You know, it's like those things I think give us life, and that uncertainty is going to have such tenfold returns. Like, it's so important.
Yeah. I love that. For me, I just so often see myself wanting things immediate, you know, in the age of information, you know, and fast media. It's so easy to want immediate results, to want immediate growth, you know, in my own life. So this topic was just a reminder of, you know, having that perspective on time, the importance of uncertainty, because in uncertainty, there's so much growth.
Yeah, completely. Let's do a little recap. So today we talked about the necessity of mystery in our lives. This topic really came off the back of a clip that we saw between Alex Hormozy and Chris Willex in their podcast. And it was really talking about, for us in this topic, you know, the different ways that maybe the average or mundane routines of our life are taking away from some of that mystery that can give us, you know, meaning and life, you know, and lively. Yeah.
So then we went into our house. Our first how was really just to look at the dull, mundane activities that maybe you're on autopilot. You're coasting. You have the safety on, so to speak. And look at those moments and areas as identifiers on what you can change.
Yeah, completely. And then we went from there and we kind of talked about, you know, when we identify those moments, how do we begin to implement adding in mystery, taking away things, and getting more uncertain?
Right. So do we go all in? Do we say, hey, I need to challenge myself here? Or do we say, hey, this isn't for me, and remove that from our life?
Completely. And then the final idea that we talked about was really perspective of time. So when it is so often that things that are bad happen to us and it feels like the world is crumbling to the ground around us, it's how do we expand our perspective and recognize that this is just one blip,
season,
in a
day,
huge
out of many days we have,
and a huge story that we're telling and we're writing in real time. Exactly.
Then we got into our whys. I talked about how it is so easy to want immediate results for me. And it's a reminder for myself to have this perspective and see the importance in uncertainty, because that's where growth is.
Completely. I think that wraps
another week of What is Humans.
Thanks, guys.